In Otterbee's Autistic Meteor Part 167, The Wild Robot, we're going to talk about autistic coding and robots. I'm using this movie as an excuse to talk about that phenomenon. The movie itself is fantastic, broke me in a lot of places, cannot recommend enough. Now, when it comes to the creation of non-human characters in media, especially if they're robots and especially if they're non-human for the purposes of making them different or other in some way, a common narrative shortcut is to use autistic coding to denote that they are other. I could argue that this finds its basis in the original Spock from Star Trek, but honestly, it could have existed earlier than that. I'm not super up to date on my pre-1960s robot content to say that definitively. Autistic coding these characters isn't deliberate in the sense that writers don't sit down and go, I will differentiate this character by making them have autistic traits, but more a byproduct of how we clue to an audience that something is different. We use different speech patterns and ways of communicating. We have them not understand or be able to follow social norms. We give them different affect and ways of moving, all kinds of things that we often perceive as autistic or maybe otherwise neurodivergent traits in a person, but often exist to clue us into a narrative of some sort when on screen or on stage. Another example would be the musical Maybe Happy Ending, which is on Broadway and you should go see it, where there's several different layers of disability allegory in that show that would make people uncomfortable were it presented at face value as two disabled characters, but works really well on stage because it's with robots instead. And you can look at the show through that lens, or you can ignore that and just say, wow, cute robots, this is great. And both are equally valid interpretations and tug at the same heartstrings regardless of how you look at it. And what's interesting about all this to me is that this is a situation where you could start a pretty solid argument about the difference between autistic coded and autistic. There are some characters we meet in various worlds that would you put them into neuropsych testing, they would come out with a diagnosis, and some characters where it's more allegorical for something else, or as is for many robots and talking animal characters, is indicative of how people think that character would see and experience the world differently than a human. So then the question is that representation or is it not? And that's something that I don't quite have the answer for beyond we should be careful with it regardless of what we do, but let me know what you think.